Hello, welcome to the Immigration Department internship training. This will be Module 1, an overview. My name is Sheila Morera. I'm the managing attorney, and we can begin. Great. So again, this is Module 1. Welcome. We are very happy that you will be joining our team. And this first module would be sort of just some general information where we work in the United States. International Rescue Committee is a global organization, but this is a map of our field offices, our resettlement offices located throughout the United States. And we will be working out of the Elizabeth, New Jersey office here. This is the Immigration Legal Services team. I'm Sheila, I'm the managing attorney. This is Milagros in the middle. She is our legal representative. She is a BIA accredited rep, and BIA stands for Board of Immigration Appeals. And what that means is that she has completed the training and the testing necessary to be able to represent clients the way an attorney would be able to before USCIS. And that is the agency that handles immigration applications. Gabriela Casco is our assistant legal representative. She has completed the training and the testing for the BIA accreditation and is waiting on her final interview. So we hope that she will also be a BIA accredited rep soon. Gabby is also in charge of our CAM program here, which is the Central American Minors Program. And we will talk a little bit about that later in the training. So below is a list of a few things to keep in mind as you begin your internship. Communication is key. The immigration program can get pretty hectic, so if you need to slow down, we completely understand. Just let us know. If you have a question, if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask us. It's best to message us on Teams, which is one of the platforms that we use for internal conversations, and we will be reviewing it later on too. Hopefully you have access to it already. Try to be on time. Punctuality is crucial because of the nature of our work and the workload. If you're running more than 15 minutes late, please do let us know by text, by Teams message, by email. We do prefer Teams. Dress appropriately. Please avoid overly casual clothes, including shorts or very short skirts for in-office days. For remote work, there is no need to dress up, but please just be respectful and come to the video calls wearing appropriate casual clothes. Do not stress out. Over the next few weeks, you will be exposed to a lot of new information. Don't worry if you don't retain everything right away. It will sink in with time and practice. Take a break when you need one. Feel free to take breaks, to eat lunch whenever you have the time during your shift. Remember to get up and stretch. I feel like sometimes we just sit in the same position for too long, and all that is really important. Over the next few days, draft at least 2 professional goals. An example might be you want to improve your time management skills, for example. And also 3 work goals, such as you'd like to assist clients with green card applications, or you'd like to become familiar with the citizenship process. Email those goals to me, and then we can discuss them a little further along into your internship. Again, thank you for joining our team. So the Immigration Department, who are we? Well, our objective is to provide comprehensive immigration services which allow clients to smoothly transition into American society by helping them navigate the legal aspects of immigration. In addition to the challenges of rebuilding their lives in a new country, refugees and asylees confront an increasingly complex and restrictive system of immigration laws as they strive toward full participation in American society with the ultimate goal of U.S. citizenship. So who are our clients? Who do we serve? We serve mostly refugees who are resettled by our New Jersey office. We serve asylees who find their way to us after they have been granted asylum status. More and more, we are seeing parolees through different programs, Ukrainian parolees, Afghan parolees, Cuban and Haitian parolees. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward in the training, and other categories of immigrants, but less so. These are who we mostly see in the immigration department: refugees, asylees, and parolees. So what are the definitions? A refugee is a person outside of his or her country of nationality who is unable or unwilling to return because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution. So persecution that already happened, or a well-founded fear of persecution that will happen in the future. And that persecution has to be on account of their race, their religion, their nationality, the fact that they are a member in a particular social group, or because of their political opinion. So that is the definition of a refugee. An asylee is a foreign-born resident who is not a U.S. citizen and who cannot go back to their country of origin or their last residence, also due to their race, nationality, because they are a member in a particular social group, or because of their political opinion. An asylee meets the same definition of refugee that's above, but they receive this status after entering the US, whereas a refugee receives their status before entering the US. A parolee is a foreign-born person who has been given permission upon arrival, or sometimes right before arriving in the US, under some emergency conditions or for a humanitarian or public interest reason. And special immigrant visa holders, we don't see too much, but I think that this will pop up enough to mention here. This is a special class of visa holders who worked for or were contractors of the United States government, either in Iraq or Afghanistan. And they had those roles for at least 1 year after March 20th, 2003. The term refugee, if we can revisit it for a moment, is any person who is outside of any country of such person's nationality, or in the case of a person having no nationality, is outside any country in which they have habitually resided, and who is unable or unwilling to return to, and is unable or unwilling to avail himself or herself of the protection of that country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. So this is the formal definition of refugee, and it comes out of the INA, which stands for Immigration and Nationality Act. And section 101 of the INA is the definition section. So this is where we find the statutory definition, meaning out of the statute, for this particular term, which we will see again and again. So here's a summary of the process that refugees go through when resettling. So the process begins overseas with UNHCR. It's the United Nations agency that initiates the resettlement process. So here, an individual or family is identified and referred for refugee status. After that, there are a series of interviews that are done overseas by outside agencies. If they pass those interviews, then USCIS, which is a US government agency, will conduct their interviews. There is a great deal of security screening that happens, what they call vetting. And if all of those security checks are cleared, it takes a great deal of time, but if all goes well, then the family or individuals may be approved. If they are denied, that's the end of the road for this process. But if they are approved, then they move forward for medical examinations. And then after the medical examinations, there is a cultural orientation. So it is decided where the family or individuals are going to resettle, where they're going to travel to, and they receive a little bit of training on what life will be like in that country. And then they travel. So let's say they come to the United States, they travel to the US, and one of the resettlement agencies like IRC will receive notification that there is a family or individuals coming. And I can say, at least in our office, we have a lot of sub departments, and everybody sort of mobilizes to support the incoming refugees. So you have the RMP team, which is the reception team. They will have found them housing. They will greet them at the airport, get them settled in their homes, make sure that they have the documentation they need. They will help the parents register the children in schools, get their Chromebooks or laptops, their Wi-Fi, whatever they need for the kids to be set up for their schooling. There's also ESL, English as a second language training. There is some job training. There is assistance with job placement for people who require psychological support. There is intensive case management and therapy that we can connect them with. So there are many aspects to the resettlement, and the agencies step in and try our best to provide our incoming refugees with what they need. The immigration department, that's our team, we step in when the clients need anything that has to do with their immigration legal status document services. So if they need to renew or replace their work permits, they can come to us. Once they are ready to file for their green cards, we can assist with that application. After 5 years, they're eligible for citizenship. We can help them file for that and study for the civics portion. Um, if they need to travel, we can help them file a travel document, which is like a passport. So that's where we come in to support this population, which are the refugees. Asylees are a different category. So what is the difference between a refugee and an asylee? Well, a refugee receives permission to come to the US when they are outside of the country, and they are resettled with the help of a refugee resettlement agency, kind of like what I just described. An asylee is already in the US when he or she applies for protection. They have to meet the same definition of refugee, but they do it once they have already arrived in the US. They have to prove that they have reason to fear persecution in their home country and that they can't return. Asylees are not the asylees are not eligible for all of the services that we provide refugees until they've actually been granted asylum status. So asylees are are eligible. It's asylum seekers who are not eligible. So they need to have that final grant of asylum from a judge or an asylum office. So here's an infographic of how refugees come to the United States. We just looked at the overseas refugee resettlement process. It begins with UNHCR, it goes through other agencies, USCIS, and when the refugees arrive here at the airport, they arrive as refugees, so they have that status, and organization will greet them and help them resettle. The affirmative asylum process is different. It's for people who have fled persecution and they have found their way into the US, usually on some sort of temporary visa, maybe like a tourist visa or a student visa. Um, Perhaps parolees, people who have been allowed to enter. temporarily, like parole, or perhaps somebody who's come through the border but was undetected and was not detained or processed by immigration at the border. So it's for anybody who finds themselves inside the US and wanting the protection of asylum. So they apply for what's called affirmative asylum, and that application is done with the asylum office, which is a part of USCIS. If they win their asylum case with the asylum office, if they are granted asylum, that's wonderful. They become asylees. After 1 year in that status, they can apply for their green cards. If they are not granted asylum status, they are usually referred to the immigration court, and then they are processed. They are in deportation proceedings, in removal proceedings. And they have a second opportunity to request asylum, but that time it will be in front of a judge. So whereas the asylum office is an interview, and it's not an adversarial situation, the immigration court is. It's a little more intimidating. There is a judge deciding. There is an ICE attorney often arguing against somebody being granted asylum. So it's harder, and it's more intimidating for the clients, but they do get that second opportunity to request asylum. And then the final two, C and D, are similar. They're both defensive asylum applications. It's just a matter of how the person finds themselves requesting it. So for C is the process for arriving asylum seekers. So these are people who present themselves at a port of entry. So perhaps like on the news, the migrant caravans that were making their way up through Mexico so that they could go to one of the ports of entries in the southern border and request asylum. These people are identified as arriving aliens, which is just a technical term in the statute, in the immigration law. And they are placed into expedited removal hearings, but if they say they're afraid to go back to their country, they are given a credible fear interview. If they pass their credible fear interview, which is just a threshold interview to see if they have a right to request asylum in front of a judge, then they would go before a judge to do their asylum application. And then they're in removal proceedings, or they might be denied their credible fear interview, and they can appeal it, or they will just get deported. So that's a little bit different than the other defensive asylum process, who are people who have found themselves in the United States. So they're not going to the border to ask for asylum. They are already in the US. And they somehow find themselves in removal proceedings for some reason. Usually it's a criminal interaction, and the police communicate with ICE, and then they find themselves issued a notice to appear, which is a document that starts deportation proceedings. And so these people also have the opportunity to go in front of a judge, and they might request asylum as their defense to deportation. So that's why they're called defensive asylum applications, because they are a defense to removal. I'll just note that there is a fairly new asylum rule that is being piloted. So it's just a small group of people who have been subject to it so far, but they are converting the credible fear interview into an actual application for asylum itself. So whereas the credible fear interview was just sort of getting somebody's foot in the door so that they could go in front of a judge and request asylum, they are now considering the credible fear interview to be one's application for asylum. And I think they have an opportunity to go to an asylum office. So everything about the structure as we've known it so far is in the process of changing. So we will keep you posted as we learn more about the rollout of this new rule. So parolees, which we've mentioned, parole and I'll just say that parole has a different definition in criminal law than it does in immigration law. So just want to flag that because very often people hear parole or parolee and they think of the criminal use of parole, which is when people are released from prison on parole. But in the immigration context, parole allows an individual who may be inadmissible or otherwise ineligible for admission into the United States to be paroled into the United States for a temporary period of time. So it is a temporary permission to come into the US. And this is what the parole stamp looks like. On the left, that's a blank one, and on the bottom right, that's sort of filled out. There's usually an expiration written in for how long the parole will be. When there is a parole that is not given at the border, but is given by USCIS instead, it looks more like this middle document here. And on the top right is the section of the INA, which is the Immigration and Nationality Act, where the authority for parole is granted. And there it just says the Attorney General, and that's a stand-in for the entire agency, may, in his discretion and in their discretion, parole into the U.S. temporarily, and on a case-by-case basis for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. So we'll see more and more of this language, and we'll come back to it. I think it's a little abstract here, but as we see more parolees, we can revisit and talk about the definition some more. So core services, what we do here. Our immigration program provides a variety of services, including the majority of our work actually is applying for lawful permanent residency. That is green cards. It's a large application, and sometimes we have very large families. So it's time consuming and it's an intensive application. And we have quite a few refugees and asylees and sometimes Cubans who require this. So it's a large part of the caseload is green card applications. We also do travel documents and work permits. We help people apply for naturalization, which is the process to become citizen. On a limited basis, we do family reunification applications, and more we have been providing legal orientations and pro se support for people in removal proceedings. Pro se support means that we cannot do direct representation in court, but we can help people navigate and fill out the more simple forms, such as motions to change venue. Perhaps they have a hearing scheduled near the border town where they first came into the country. So they might have a hearing in Arizona or Texas, and we can help them fill out the form, a motion to request that they have their case transferred up to Newark or New York or wherever they are now. We can also help with change of address forms in the court and just explain their paperwork to them so that they know what everything means and that they don't miss any of their hearings, because that's very important. So what are some training resources as we go through the training? The first is our online manual. This is a live document, so we try to keep it up to date and current. It also has hyperlinks, so as you look through it, you will see links to YouTube training videos. I try to keep everything really short. I don't think there's anything too long. I know that the IRC Kaya training might have some long orientation videos, but our videos all keep it short. And that document does link to some readings which are housed in Box, which is our cloud storage space where we keep everything. And this is what the onboarding materials folder will look like in Box. So I'll make sure to share it with everybody. Hopefully you have access. The Kaya trainings, these are the official network-wide IRC orientations or more general overviews on IRC. And then I've created a checklist because I find checklist very helpful. So it's a fillable form. So I ask that as you go through it, you check it off. And on the second page, it asks for a few short answers to be filled out and emailed back to me when you're done with everything. If there's anything that's not accessible at the moment, I think the Lolly Law, which is our legal software, I think that training video is down. So I need to figure that out. But if anything is not opening or accessible, just shoot us a message by Teams and let us know. So before we go, oops, that's module 2. Yes, before we go to the next module, I will just show you what the syllabus looks like, the training manual and syllabus. That was a screenshot in the PowerPoint, but it looks like this with lots of hyperlinks. So these are all the different modules, short readings, the Immigration Program Policy Manual. This is our network-wide policy manual. You don't need to read the whole thing, but at least know that it is here. You can skim it. You can come back to it whenever you have any questions. IRC Way Code of Conduct. I will email it to you, but you can also always find it here, and it's in the box file, so you can also go back to that as needed. And as we go through the trainings, just know that everything should be linked and connected so that this one document is important and you can keep coming back to it. So I would bookmark it if you can, so that you don't need to search for it again and again. So this is what we will go through. And here is a copy of the training checklist, and you'll see that at the bottom. I ask you to state your main goals. Are there any areas that you think require a little more training? And here's just the final print that you've completed the training videos. And so the first are R's in the syllabus. And again, it seems like a lot, but sometimes it's just like a short couple paragraphs of reading for this and just skim what our service agreement might look like. So it shouldn't be too bad. And then this is the Kaya checklist, and this is also required. And this should be in your Kaya platform, which is under RescueNet. So I hope that you have access to that as well. So that is the end of the first module, and I will stop sharing and stop recording, and I will see you in module 2. Thank you.